Now to a tale of love, madness and dancing until you drop, all of which would be familiar to ballet fans as the plot from Giselle. But now the Australian Dance Theatre has taken Giselle and given it a seriously sexy makeover. The result is called G. Leah MacLennan reports.
This is a far cry from a traditional ballet, but it has its origins in one of the classic ballets of the Romantic period. G is a modern adaptation of Giselle, choreographed by Garry Stewart for the Australian Dance Theatre.
What we've tried to do is really, to an extent, deconstruct the narrative and also look at the kind of the sort of surrounding thematics to Giselle. The fact that it's one of the preeminent narrative classical ballets from the Romantic period. It's one of the sort of it exists within the canon of the kind of great works. So what the piece represents is primarily sort of major themes that exist in the narrative, as well as some of the choreographic content. However, it's been reworked so that it sits inside a different kind of choreographic frame.
In the original story, Giselle is a peasant girl who falls in love but has her heart broken and dies. Garry Stewart says Giselle originally committed suicide, but in most performances today, she becomes hysterical and dies of a weak heart. It's an element of the ballet that Garry Stewart explores.
Certainly it's a kind of a very dramatic moment in the ballet and a turning point, and it's something that we've amplified in the work. You know, we've really taken that sort of 4 or 5 minutes from the ballet and really, broken that open and kind of looked at what's contained within that as a commentary on women and within the Romantic period.
Garry Stewart says it's not just Giselle's death, but her mental state that is the focus of the piece.
Hysteria was applied or pathologised as a kind of an illness that applied particularly to women in the Romantic period, and women are often pathologised as being hysterics for a whole range of symptoms. Some symptoms that obviously that we wouldn't consider abnormal at all today, but in the Romantic period, which was a very repressive era for women, they could often be pathologised and then hospitalised for kind of a whole range of symptoms.
The choreography has the dancers constantly moving across the stage from left to right, which means they have to do loops behind stage. In one performance, the dancers might run several kilometres.
It's kind of like a marathon, to be quite honest. You go from one side of the stage to the other constantly. It doesn't go in any other direction. So you have to dance on stage plus run around the back constantly. So you never stop. So yeah, it's pretty hard on the old adrenaline, and the heart keeps pumping.
When I first thought of this idea, this concept, I guess that sort of didn't really occur to me that would be something to deal with in and of itself, but certainly we've had to implement a training regime that's really gotten their fitness up to speed. So they do a lot of they normally train in elements of gymnastics as well as contemporary dance and ballet, but they're also doing circuit training and a lot of cardio as well. That it's a program we've worked out with them and also with their physiotherapists.
Garry Stewart trialled the early stages of G at the 2008 Adelaide Festival. Since then, ADT has spent 3 months in performances across Europe.
When we tour to Europe, the style that we're doing is really strong and aggressive and high impact, you could say, with all the tumbling. So they're not really doing that as much anymore. In the past years that was kind of done, but they're getting a little bit softer and more theatrical in their stuff. So in Europe, when we go over there, it's pretty amazing to show what we have.
Kimball Wong has been with ADT since 2008. While he's been dancing in G since that time, he says he's constantly relearning it because Garry Stewart is constantly changing and improving the piece.
It can be very intense. he's very demanding as to what he wants to see. I think he's usually got a very clear picture in his head of how he sees the piece. And it means the piece is constantly developing as well, which is a great thing to know that he's always looking for a way to improve it.
Garry Stewart is already known for deconstructing classic ballets. His production of Birdbrain was a modern take on Swan Lake. He says fans of traditional ballet and of contemporary dance alike enjoy Birdbrain and G.
Why we want to look at classics is to see their relevance to today or see their irrelevance to today. I think it's interesting to have something that we herald as a cultural icon or some kind of powerful cultural emblem as the classics of any artistic canon appear to be, but then to take that and reconfigure that within sort of contemporary mores and contemporary values and contemporary cultural aesthetic codes, and then to see what sort of remains and what falls behind, what is relevant to us, and also what seems to be far away from how we live now.
And that's Stateline for tonight. You can contact us at abc.net.au/stateline/SA.